And
Oh, nice.
that school shares a campus with two other schools, one of them being Metropolitan State. And in the student union at Metropolitan State, they have a media center. And in that media center, they had a radio station. And so Jimmy and I had kind of been dabbling a little bit, just fiddling around with our computers and stuff. And he went in and said, "Hey, is this for any of the students that go here?" And they were like, "If you are a student on any of these three campuses, you have access and can use the radio station, and we'll teach you how to do all the editing and all that stuff." And that was at the end of the semester of spring of 2019. And so Jimmy and I spent all summer in there learning how to edit and do all the things and use the programs, and stockpiled a lot of episodes because we just had the free time and people were saying yes to us. And right around the 50th episode, we had Damian Hahn on
Oh,
from
nice.
fellow Ocean County resident back in the day. We grew up in the same county. And that day after we got off the phone with him was when the world kind of went sideways.
Mm.
And so we'd built up a pretty good catalog of guests, and then everyone was sitting around twiddling their thumbs for 6 months to a year. So no one said no to us. And so we were able to accumulate a lot of great guests. And then I moved to South Carolina to take over a wrestling program at a high school down here. And then we kind of got back into our wheelhouse, which is cross country, track and field, and wrestling. And so for the last 2 years, we've been doing our best to interview coaches like yourself, coaches on the cross country and track and field circuit as well. Not just Division I, but Division III, Division II, JUCO, NAIA. And we've been having a lot of fun with it, and the people back home and people abroad that we know really enjoy it. So we're just continuing that with our passion, and again, trying to spread the word on coaches like yourself, programs like yourselves, and yeah, do our part to be what we can do to grow the sport.
Excellent. Now, how did you get connected with Fekete?
Jim?
I went to the Internal Warrior Wrestling Camp when I was in end of my senior year in high school, and then I was a counselor there. And we had a gentleman named Paul Check on the podcast. He's a holistic health coach, and Jarrett found him. He found that episode, and because he was a fan of Paul Check, and he listened to that episode. And when I opened that podcast up, I told Paul, what got me on my spiritual journey was that wrestling camp. And Jared heard that, and he reached out, and we're like, "You're doing some awesome things. Let's chat."
Nice. Good. Good. Yeah. I love Jared.
He's a good dude. We had a lot of fun talking with him. Ladies and gentlemen, howdy and aloha. We are here, you are there, and we greatly appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Airey Bros Radio. Tonight, we're stepping back on the mat to go belly to belly with Coach Jim Gruenwald, Olympic wrestler, national champion, head wrestling coach at Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. Before we get rolling, you all know the drill. Make sure you are subscribed. Give this episode and all our other episodes a like if you haven't done so already. Drop a comment, please. Every review, every share helps grow the sport and give back to the sport that we love. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. As always, this episode is fueled by CS Instant Coffee and Black Sheep Endurance Coaching. And let's not forget, while we're doing this over here, this is a grassroots movement over here at Airey Bros Radio. We're trying to shine a light on the programs and coaches we wish we had access to coming up. If you or someone you know is looking for a right fit at the next level, please share this episode with them. Wrestlers, parents, coaches, pull up a seat. Let's go live with Coach Jim Gruenwald. He is a two-time Olympian competing in Greco-Roman wrestling. He competed at the 2000 Sydney Olympics and in 2004 in Athens. He's a three-time U.S. national champion and a 2003 Pan Am bronze medalist. As I mentioned, he's the head wrestling coach at Wheaton College. He's a builder of national talent and All-Americans at the Division III level. And he's also the author of Not All Roads Lead to Gold. Without further ado, it is an honor and a pleasure. We're excited to chat with you tonight, and we greatly appreciate your time. Coach Gruenwald, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jimmy and Rich. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we were excited to chat with you tonight. We already talked a little bit about our through line, so we can get right into it. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, if you have anything you would like to plug or promote, if you have any camps coming up this summer at the college or anywhere you would like recruits that are interested in what they hear tonight, the floor is yours.
Yeah, actually, we do have, I'm going to be traveling all throughout the country in June and July, but we do have two camps at Wheaton College, July 15th to the 17th. in July 22nd to the 24th. They're commuter camps, but there are some pretty close hotels, and we've had people coming from as far as Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California to do our camps.
Awesome. And when you're traveling around doing camps, do you focus on Greco-Roman or folk style, a little bit of everything?
Little bit of everything. Some
Yeah.
people want hand fighting, right? Because we're terrible at hand fighting in this country. We think that just having stone hands makes you a good hand fighter, and we forget the nuances of underhooks, 2-on-1s, collar ties, and what that really looks like at high level of wrestling. So I'll do quite a bit of hand fighting, and then honestly, a lot of coaches, because everybody wants to teach the pretty stuff, the pretty technique, your favorite takedowns from the feet and all that grand and glorious wrestling. When it comes down to it, most kids struggle with getting off their belly, getting off a bottom. And when you make that transition from high school to college, probably the number one thing that young people struggle with is getting off your belly and getting off a bottom. So in the entirety of last summer, I spent teaching kids, hey, how do you get off a bottom? And I did use some Greco technique, just the strength of being in a gut wrench position and not getting turned, and using that to be able to get from your belly to a sit-out position, and from a sit-out position, either to kipping out or getting to your feet.
So, excuse me. So Coach, the way we like to start off is we all have our origin stories, how we got into the sport. Mine's a little bit different than Jimmy's. We're 11 years apart. So a lot of Jimmy's youth was spent either at cross country races, track meets, or in the gyms at wrestling matches and tournaments. And so he kind of followed suit and then cut his own path in wrestling and went that route in college. And I went the track and field route in college. What's your origin story? How did you get involved with the sport? How did that lead you to Greco-Roman? And then how did that all lead you to coaching?
Yeah, great question. So my origin story, and again, all this is in my book, Not All Roads Lead to Gold. And so I'll give you the cliff notes of it, but I lost a fight. I lost a fight at a school bus stop, right? One of my buddies and I, because, when you're kids, you're fighting 1 second, your best friend's the next, it goes back and forth. Well, we get the jawing at each other, and I popped him in the face 3 times with 3 really nice punches. And he grabbed his face, bent over. I thought I'd won the fight. And then all of a sudden he let go of his face, and he charged me and got a double leg takedown. And just before he could really start pounding on me, his dad came out there, and I was like maybe 60 pounds dripping wet at the time. I was a tiny kid, and he was about 100 pounds, 120 pounds. So he's twice as big as I was. And his dad yanked him off and said, pick on people your own size. And I think his dad might have smacked him around a bit. So, but like a few weeks after that, he's like, hey, Jim, a wrestling practices start. Do you want to wrestle? And I'm like, remembering this, I was great boxing, because I had a brother and we fought all the time, but not so great wrestling. And I immediately jumped on the wrestling. So that's my origin story. I dabbled in it in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, kind of got serious in 8th grade because I went through the regular season and then got into the freestyle. And then by my freshman year, it was freestyle, folk style, Greco. And the way that I got into Greco was an accident. We showed up to the freestyle a regional national tournament a day early. And so I just stepped on the scale, weighed in, and then wrestled the Greco tournament. And I won the Northern Plains Regional National Tournament as a freshman in high school and just fell in love with Greco. So that's my origin story, how I got into Greco. And then I think your follow-up question is, how did I get into coaching? It's interesting because even when I was in high school, I wanted to teach people how to be better. So guys would ask me, hey, what are you doing there? And I would show them, and my high school coach will even to this day would say, like, Jim was coaching people in high school, or he would have me show what I would do. And that is the same thing. I mean, when I started doing college wrestling, I would help people in the room, and then started doing camps and clinics as an 18-year-old. You're always on the mat working with people and breaking it down. And I think part of what helped me become a better coach was being a math teacher, because as a math teacher, if you want to be a good one, you've got to break things down to manageable bites so kids can understand math. And I realize the same thing applies to wrestling. A lot of these guys will go out there and they'll want to teach an entire move, and they'll spend 10, 15 minutes doing it and just kind of just vomiting out everything that they know about the sport. And I normally go for a minute or two of teaching and then let them go out and do it for a minute or two and then come back in and we'll fix it. And then you can progress through a move. So I won't show 1,000 moves at a camp. I'll show like 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe. But the kids leave having gained mind and muscle memory and becoming better wrestlers, rather than just being a big giant ego show where I go out there and show them everything that I know and they walk out of the camp knowing nothing.
Well, Coach, Wish I would have attended one of your camps or your clinics when I was going through the process, because I felt like every time I went to a camp or a clinic, by the time they got done showing the move, I was like, so what are we doing? So I think I would have benefited from like those 30-second, 1 minute kind of clips of breaking it down and simplifying it, because Jimmy and I always talk about, like, I know for me, I was in really good shape. And that helped me a lot if I got on top of you. But from a wrestling IQ perspective in high school, it wasn't what it was. And I would have benefited a lot. I'm curious, did you grow up in Illinois?
No, I'm a Wisconsin
Okay.
kid. So
Cheesehead.
I grew, yeah, cheesehead, man, in and around. My dad is a diehard Packers, Brewers, and Bucks fan. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, no, I grew up in and around the Milwaukee area. We bounced around quite a bit, especially after my parents got divorced. We seemed like anytime that they raised the rent by $25, my mom was moving us to a different place. But yeah, I'm a Wisconsin boy.
Okay. Anywhere near Pewaukee?
They're close, but my
Okay.
geography's terrible. I just remember wrestling a couple of kids from Milwaukee. Yep.
Okay. I had a roommate in college who's from Pewaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coach, you mentioned being a math teacher, and I want to talk about that real quick. I know that has nothing to do with why we had you on the podcast, but I was someone who was really bad at math. It took me 4 years to finish one remedial class in college, and it was why I was at the junior college for so long. I'm curious, I know you said breaking it down and put it in parts. Do you think that's what separates a good math teacher from a bad one?
100%, yeah. Because ultimately, when you break math down, it's like anything else. It's a rules and relationships. And when you understand the rules and relationships, then you're going to be fine. I had so many kids coming in with math anxiety from middle school, and they were like, Mr. Gruenwald, Mr. Gruenwald, Mr. G. They call me Mr. G. I'm going to fail your class. I'm like, you're going to be fine. And I explained to them why they were going to be fine. I said, number one, this percentage of your grade is going to be your homework, and that's just effort based. Okay, it's effort based. 40% of your grade or excuse me, 30% of your grade is effort based. Just do the homework, try it. Don't write down my dog, something stupid. Just try the problems. Even if it's wrong, we'll go over every problem in the homework. And then what I would do is from the homework, I would take the quizzes. So there was no like surprise. Some teachers like pride themselves on surprise questions. That's nonsense. You teach the material, you quiz the material, and then the test would just basically be the quiz questions. So they would see all these problems 3 or 4 times. And I may change the numbers a little bit, but essentially the problems were the same. And even if a kid got 100 on all their homework and got 50% on quizzes and tests, they would still pass the class with about a 70.
Were you
So
teaching math? Sorry.
I was just going to say, so it takes the fear out of it, knowing that I made it effort based, which means that the kids would work hard. I mean, they've done studies on this. If you praise results, kids will actually go backward. But if you praise effort, they'll improve. And so you praise effort, you make effort the key to success, at least low level success, and kids are going to do fine. No, your smart kids are always going to be smart kids, right? You just point them in the right direction. Same thing with athletes. Your all-American athletes are going to be your all-American athletes. You just give them some guide rails so they don't go off the rails. But it's the same thing in math. Yeah, I love it. I love teaching math. I love teaching wrestling. I love being a parent, coach. It's all awesome.
Every coach we have on here who's a good coach, they say they judge their athletes on attitude and effort.
Yeah.
And I say to Rich, man, my wrestling would have been a lot easier if that's what I judged myself on, opposed to results.
Yeah, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is how many people actually have great results. It's a fraction. It's 0.0. I mean, to make an NFL a team or professional baseball or professional basketball or an Olympic team, you're like 0.0001% of athletes. And then to be like a Jordan Burroughs or a Kyle Snyder, or Michael Jordan or a Tiger Woods, now you're talking about taking a penny and cutting it into 10,000 pieces, right? We know a penny is 1% of a dollar. Cut that penny into 10,000 pieces, and that's Jordan Burroughs. I took the penny and I cut it into 1,000 pieces. That was my ceiling. So I can't complain about my career, but I was not Kyle Snyder or Jordan Burroughs or Jaden Cox or Kyle Dake. I was not Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan. I was not one of those guys. I can't underplay the success that God granted me, right? I was a very successful wrestler, but I was not a superstar. Those guys are.
Were you teaching when you were on the Olympic ladder and on the Olympic team?
That's how I paid the bills, right? My best year of wrestling, when I was fourth in the world, I made like $25,000 that year. If I was the fourth best golfer in the world, I'd be a multi-gazillionaire, right? But yeah, I was working at a small Christian school. I think the first year that I had 5 different classes I had to teach. It was Algebra 1, Algebra 2, trig, geometry, and depending on the year, it was either an consumer math, which is good, right? It's a practical math class, or it was calculus. And I think my first year I made $6,000 there, and by the time that I was finished, I was making like just over 13. But that helped me fund but they were very flexible with my schedule. Anytime I needed off for a tournament, they're like, go, we'll get a sub. Just when you come back, you got to play catch up because our subs don't know how to teach math. So it was great. I can't complain, but I wish I would have made a little bit more money.
Was it any different from being a student athlete and being a teacher, or was it kind of felt the same for you?
No, it was a lot harder because listen, I was teaching for approximately, let's see, 20 hours a week because I was considered just part-time despite the fact normally when you're a teacher, you'll have like 3 geometry classes and 2 algebra classes and then 2 prep periods, right? I had 5 different classes and no prep periods because I was training in the morning, then teaching for 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, and then training, coming right from school, training again, and then going home, eating, grading papers, going to bed, rinse and repeat for 12 years.
Wow.
It was brutal.
And you had 5 different preps to plan for. So that in itself, like you said, a lot of times when teachers are teaching, we teach one subject, maybe 2, but to have algebra, geometry, trigonometry, consumer math, that's a lot of planning. You're not using the same lesson plan for all 4 or 5 classes. You got 5 different classes you're teaching. That's pretty time intensive.
Yeah, thankfully, math, I'm not like Goodwill Hunting, super genius math, kind of like with my wrestling, right? I'm good at it. I'm not a superstar at it. But one of the things that I was able to do is make it relatable to the kids and make it easy for them to understand. And so it was fun. I tried to make as much as you can. Just as when I go to a camp, wrestling camp or clinic, you've got to be relevant and entertaining. Same thing with teaching, right? You've got to be relevant and you've got to be entertaining. So teaching's teaching, coaching's coaching. It doesn't make a difference whether you're working with little kids or Olympic level athletes. Now, clearly you're going to do some things a little bit different, but teaching's teaching, coaching's coaching, parenting's parenting.
So as a math guy, we hear from a lot of coaches, their dreaded part of their job as a coach is the expense reports. Do you enjoy that aspect of it since you're a numbers guy?
You know what? I don't like office monkey work at all. I love being on the mat. I love writing newsletters. I like all that part of it, but sitting in my office and reconciling bills, no, I'm not a bean counter. I don't like that.
Okay.
If I could hire an assistant coach to make them do it, I would in a heartbeat.
So add coach to the list, Jim. We haven't had many people that they usually hand off their expense reports with everyone we talk to.
Yep, absolutely.
That's usually the director of operations that gets that job.
Yeah. Well, but being in a smaller school, I'm the director of operations.
Yeah.
I'm the nutritionist. Periodization of training. I'm the counselor. I'm the in-room guy. I'm the travel guy. I'm everything.
So you don't sleep much, do you?
Oh, I don't prioritize it, but I know that it's healthy to sleep, and my mind will work better if I do get a good night's sleep. So yes, I do sleep fine.
Yeah. Outside of the X's and O's of the training aspect of being on the mat with the guys, do you have a favorite hat that you like to wear outside of the room from a coaching
Just
perspective?
mentor. I love mentoring people. I mean, the spiritual, the Christian spiritual component. I mean, we even start practice. I have what we call a 5-minute pre-practice rant. And that's actually how the devotional, the 3rd book that came into being, is guys would come up to me and say, "Hey, coach, we really love what you said, but like a week later, we forgot some of it or forgot all of it. And it was really good. And I didn't take any notes. You need to write a book of rants." And I was like, "Okay, well, give me some time." And then I wasn't really comfortable with writing at the time that they said that. And then I went through the writing process with the first book, and then I went through the writing process with the second book. And then all of a sudden, by the time I got to the devotional, which is the one that I really wanted to do, it kind of all clicked and it was everything that I wanted it to be. And so that part of it, that pre-practice rant, and then we start every practice with prayer. We finish every practice with prayer. I go to churches and speak not as much as I do wrestling camps and clinics, but some of them are 2-in-1. Like when I do the FCA wrestling camps, I'm both a clinician and then I do the chapels in the evening.
Okay. Well, since we're on the book, let's talk about that a little bit. Your first book, you said you weren't necessarily comfortable with writing, and that kind of, as you did the other book and then got into devotionals, you kind of hit your groove. What was the inspiration for the first book? Did someone encourage you to do that, or did you just have some thoughts bouncing around your head and thought, I got to get this on paper?
No, I always thought things like that were self-serving. So when Craig Sesker approached me, who'd worked for USA Wrestling and then he kind of branched off on his own, Craig Sesker approached me and said, Jim, you need to write about your story. It's a really cool story. I mean, you were at the Olympic level for 16 years. I'm like, yeah, right, Craig. Everybody wants to read about a guy who for 16 years, scratched and clawed and was never a world and Olympic medalist the entire time. He's like, actually, Jim, all of your snarkiness aside, people can't relate to Kyle Dake or to Jordan Burroughs because they are just so beyond anything. I mean, and to put this in perspective, when I do camps and clinics, even now, they say, oh, Jim Gruenwald's been on 2 Olympic teams, and kids will kind of like look at that and think, oh, that's kind of cool. You say, oh, Jim Gruenwald won the state tournament. They're like, oh my goodness, you were a state champ. You won states. And I'm like, yeah. And so even just going to the Olympics a lot of times is beyond what people can comprehend. I mean, they know that it exists, but the amount of effort that it takes, it's more relatable to talk about being a state champ, right? And so Craig encouraged me to do it, and I was like, okay, let me think about it. And then I was talking with Tom Ryan, the coach at the Ohio State, and he was like, Jim, your story's awesome. I got guys on my team that need to hear about your story. You need to do this book. And I'm like, okay, Tom, well, if I'm going to write the book, you have to write the foreword. And he's like, okay. And like a couple of weeks later, he had the foreword, and it was amazing. I tell people right now, if you look at the cover of my book, the title, the pictures, and the foreword by Tom Ryan, that in and of itself is worth the price of the book because there's just so much there. The title in and of itself, it's so few words, but it means so much. And then if you look at the 2 pictures, I picked those 2 pictures very definitely because they scream the agony that is involved in both winning and losing. And so that's how it started. So Craig interviewed me over the course of 6 months. He transcribed all of that and he said, okay, now put it in your voice. And so when I was growing up, I was a reading monster, right? I read 30 to 40 books a year. I only read about, maybe 10 or 15 now. Science fiction, fantasy nerd, but some really good authors. And that influenced my writing a little bit, but I just learned how to be a better writer. And I'd been doing things up to that point that were smaller projects for other people. And then all of a sudden it helped having everything there and then writing it and then editing it and then learning. And then so by the time that I got to my second book, I felt really good about my writing style.
We had Martin Rudy on the podcast. He's a strength and conditioning coach and has wrote 4 or 5 books. And he told Rich and I, if you're going to write a book, you better read a bunch before you write a book. And he was showing us his library, and it's something like you where, he's devouring books all the time. So I like to hear that, Rich. That is one thing I do not do. So maybe I gotta let go of the audio books and start reading a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a follow-up. Everybody's like, hey, when's your book's going to be on audio? I'm like, well, that's a whole nother process. Thankfully, I think I have one of my student athletes. He was a communications major and he does some studio work. So he might actually help me with the audio version of it. I haven't looked into what's all involved. It's in a whole nother process. And I know there's a cost element to that as well. So at some point I'm going to get it to an audio book because people do like to listen to things while they drive. I get that. And it's just another avenue to sell and get your material out there as well.
Coach, you were saying that the guys on the team said, hey, you need to do a devotional. You're doing all these rants, you're throwing all of this good stuff out, but we don't remember it. Do you find that being at Wheaton, that allows you to get into spirituality, get into Christ, and make your job a little bit easier, where coaches at other schools might have to skirt those lines a little bit?
100% yes, right? I mean, if you walk into our wrestling room, it has Jesus Christ's life, the rest is just wrestling plastered on the wall, right? So I have no restrictions whatsoever with regard. In fact, honestly, if I ran a 2-hour wrestling practice and used half of it to mentor my guys spiritually, I don't think we would complain at all. No, we would be terrible wrestlers. You got to do the right thing for the right amount of time, right? You got to do the right thing the right way. That's one of That's one of my leadership principles of 3-5-7 leadership principles. And that the 5 is doing things the 5 rights. You got to do the right thing the right way with the right person at the right time for the right reason. And if you do all 5 of those rights right, you can possibly capture a heart. Doesn't mean you always will, but you have a much better chance. And anyway, so going back to your original question, yeah, I mean, my ability to mentor people from a biblical perspective is very easy at Wheaton College because that's what we do. That's what Wheaton's about.
Do you have kids coming in that aren't Christians, or is the majority of the kids coming in Christians?
So technically, the answer to that question should be no. Everybody who comes to Wheaton College has to have a statement of faith. Now, are there occasionally kids who lie about their statement of faith, chat GPT it, their parents write it for them? Absolutely. Do some kids come into my program and it's kind of like just a little ember of a faith, but after 4 years of me fanning that flame, they leave a much different human being than they walked in? Absolutely. So we have different, varying degrees of how deep people are in their faith, but I inundate those kids. Every cell of their brain gets inundated with Jesus Christ's life and what that means and how they need to go back to their communities and spread that same message, because I do want it to take over the world.
Was the faith-based aspect of Wheaton something that drew you to the college?
Honestly, no. In fact, the exact opposite. When I was initially training to be a teacher, I swore when I was at Maranatha that I would never teach at a Christian school because I thought Christians were just so soft and weak, and I didn't want to deal with their softness and their weakness. I'd much rather deal with the world, right? Because at least you know what you're getting there. And I just didn't like a lot of the backstabbing, the kind of when you pull your eyes off Christ and you start looking at actual people. It can be difficult at times. And when I was a younger Jim Gruenwald and I didn't have a whole lot of grace in my life, I just like, you know what? Screw Christians. I don't want to deal with these people. I'd rather just be out in the world telling kids about Jesus, right? Even if I am limited in what I can do it, at least I can still do that. And then yet God called me to a Christian high school where I taught for 12 years. And then I was coaching at the Olympic level, and I was there doing Bible studies, even in that secular environment. I would invite guys to it. And eventually Wheaton approached me, and it came down to my wife and I prayed about it. And we just really felt the Lord leading us to Wheaton because we decided that we need to make Christian men stronger in their faith, not just physically, but their whole character. And again, words are important, right? Character is important, how we define things. So that verse that iron sharpens iron, just as a person sharpens the character of his friend, Proverbs 27:17. The world uses iron sharpens iron, but very few people actually use, even in Christian circles, just as a person sharpens the characters. Because we talk about character, it's good character, it's bad character, but do we define what character is? And so I do, because I like clear definitions. It takes all the ambiguity out of your statement. And so a person's character is who they are physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. And you cannot compartmentalize that. Just like a bad apple will rot the barrel, so one part of your character will bring the rest of it down. So you've seen guys looking like Greek gods in a singlet, but they're emotionally weak and they crumble, they choke in those high pressure situations, or they look like a Greek god in a singlet and they're dumb as a box of rocks, so they're not even eligible to wrestle. Or, I wasn't the best athlete at the Olympic Training Center, but I made much better moral decisions. And so here you've got this guy from this dinky little Christian college of 450 students doing this in his Olympic career, and guys coming on a D1 program were flatlining or sometimes going down. Why? Well, because I wasn't going out and staying out until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get drunk and get laid, right? That's just the facts. And so when you roll into practice at 8 o'clock the next morning, I've got a lot of piss and vinegar in my tank because I got a good night's sleep and I'm ready to go. Where a guy that was out until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's dragging his butt in practice. Well, and that's the reason why. So there's some amazing athletes out there that terrified me. But because they made poor choices, I was able to crush their soul and win those wrestling matches.
Coach, you bring up a good point. I think Rich and I will both tell you we won a bunch of wrestle matches and a bunch of races because we weren't out partying, because that's how we lived. And necessarily wasn't a faith-based thing. It was just our parents were really strict.
Fear.
And yeah, and if we were going to run, we were going to wrestle, we were going to do it right. And I always felt that was my edge in high school and in college, was just I remember wrestling some kids that I knew partied, and in my head, I was no way. There's no way you're beating me. And
Right.
you know what? I might probably shouldn't have beat them, but because of that attitude, I was able to beat them. So thank you for sharing that. And I also in my faith journey, and Rich will tell you, he used to call me out. I was in it for all the wrong reasons. I was in it to win wrestle matches, and I was very immature in my faith. How do you approach kids like that you can kind of see maybe are doing it out of the ego and not out of their heart?
Right. So that's good because I was one of those kids too, right? I didn't just want to be the best at the tournament in my weight class. I wanted to be voted, most outstanding. So I would pray for that, right? And it wasn't, hey, Father, may you be glorified by me getting, voted. It wasn't even that. There was no like just dipping my toes in the waters of self-glorification. It was, God, I want people to vote me most outstanding. So number one, I understand that. And it wasn't until years later when I really started doing a deep dive into Philippians 4:13, which is probably one of the most misused verses in all of sports. I can do all things through him who.
You there, Jim?
I am. You
Okay.
there?
Yeah.
Philippians 4:13.
I can do all things through Christ, right? Is that what that is?
Hang tight, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when you go live. I'm sure we'll get Coach
Yep,
Gruenwald. You
I'm
there?
back. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you're good.
Oops.
So you cut off at excuse me at Philippians 4:13.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Philippians 4:13 is one of the most misused verses in the Bible. You see kids with it on the shirt. I can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens me, right? And like they're going to win a state tournament because Jesus Christ strengthens them. Now there's some truth to that, but I can't say that I'm going to go out and pull a tree out of the ground because Jesus Christ strengthens me. The idea of the verse is Paul was talking about the secret to life and handling life in the highs and the lows. And so one of the things is what I tell kids is, okay, if you're going to do this, you want to be able to do this and get high level success, but you don't want to be arrogant through the process. So how do you, because Paul talks about being able to experience life and being full or suffering want, right? Having highs and having lows, being at the highest that you could be. And what happens though, when you go to the state tournament, you go 0-2, right? And then you're going to fall into despondency or hopelessness. How do you handle that? So the verse is actually better interpreted. I can handle all things. Not I can do all things. I can handle all things through him who gives me power. So that verse, Philippians 4:13, is about handling the highs of life without becoming arrogant or the lows of life and not becoming hopeless. And so a lot of times I'll connect with kids that way because there's always going to be an end date. Even the best guys lose. Like for years, Jordan Burroughs didn't lose at the World Olympic level until he did. How do you handle that? How do you handle, becoming an Olympic champ without becoming arrogant? So listening to his stories, interesting as well, because we make really bad choices at the super highs and super lows. And I want kids to understand the Bible, that you can handle those high and low moments by using scripture appropriately. And so that's how I target kids.
Thank you for breaking that down for me because I think I needed that broken down a little more. And I know there's been times in my life where everything's going good and it's real easy to judge someone. And then when you fall, you want someone for you don't remember those times you judge them.
Yeah, and that's part
Coach,
of it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, finish. You can finish.
Oh, I was just saying,
You still there?
yeah, still here. Still here. I don't know why my connection
I
was
think
really
that's
good for a
you,
while
Jim.
there. Yeah, it is me. 100% me.
No, the other Jim, my brother Jim. I think it was him that time. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought I was fine and you were a little
You're
choppy.
fine.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so part of that is just um a lot of times, when you read the Bible, you've got to put it in context. What are the verses or what is the chapter, what's going on beforehand? And so that verse specifically, Paul talks about this is going to be the secret of life, and he gives the example of the fullness and the emptiness that sometimes happens in life. And so you break that down for people and let them know this is the appropriate way to use scripture because that's just the road to heresy is a misunderstanding of the Father and what he wants. Now, does God want us to be successful? Sometimes. Sometimes he does, but you got to be careful so you don't slide into that health and wealth prosperity gospel movement where all of a sudden God's just a genie in a bottle for you. And that's not his intent. He's the creator of the universe. He is not impressed with Jim Gruenwald being on 2 Olympic teams. It's not like I'm going to get to heaven. He's going to hold up a poster saying, "Hey, Jim, can you sign this? I got this on eBay." And I was hoping the creator of the universe does not want my autograph, right? It's more important is what did I do with what he did give me? And so it all comes back to, yes, you can strain for an Olympic title or a national title or state title, but what are you going to do with it afterwards? Are you going to use it to glorify yourself or are you going to use it to glorify him? Because he's also a God that humbles the proud. And I don't want to be, I don't want to experience that part of God, of having him humble me. I want to start with humility because it's one thing to have another human being slap you down. I don't want the creator of the universe squashing me.
Yes. And Coach, when you're breaking down the Bible and how to interpret it and how to act upon scripture, do you have any suggestions for how to tackle the Bible, how long it should take to go through it verse by verse, chapter by chapter?
Yeah, so a couple things that I do for that personally have helped me. Number one, I have a Bible. It's 1,811 pages long. So I divide that by 365 days. That means I've got to read 5 pages a day. Just at 5 pages a day. Some days I read more, some days I read less, but typically it averages 5. And then the other part is I read the Bible with a theme. So there have been times that I've read the Bible. Okay, what is the Bible? And again, if God's going to speak to me and tell me something, I'm open to that. But I want my reading to be intentional. So some years I've gone through and read the Bible with, okay, what does rest and renewal look like in Scripture? What is it to be a Christian husband or a Christian father or a Christian neighbor? What does that look like? And so I'll read the entire Bible with that idea. Okay, this time I'm going to read, this year I'm reading it. What does a Christian husband look like in the Bible? And I'll look at, both good and bad examples of it. And of course, we want to imitate the good and make sure we avoid the bad. And there have been other themes, throughout the years. I mean, I've read the Bible over 30 times from cover to cover. The last 10 years, I've been doing it with the idea of, okay, I'm going to read it through with a theme. Right now, I'm reading it through with the theme of, and this is a little bit dangerous, but it was something I think I'm mature enough in my spiritual walk to do, is reading it. Why God? Why did God do that? Why? And sometimes there's an answer and sometimes there's not. But I'm asking God why. Show me the whys of what you do. And he'll reveal to me what he does. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. If he does, awesome. Then I get a little bit better at understanding him and his word.
Coach, besides the faith aspect of Wheaton, what makes Wheaton unique and stand out as a college and amongst Division III athletics?
Okay, so number one, we're in that sweet spot of sizes. In other words, we're not so small that everybody knows everybody's business, but we're not so big that you're just another number. So I think that's a really excellent place that Wheaton is in. I think that ideal for college size. Number one, we've got such a strong community. Like if you go to Elmhurst, just right down the road, I think like over 80% of them are commuters, where 85 to 90% of Wheaton students are in the dorms. Wheaton really pushes the community aspect. That's super important. So you've got size, you've got community, and then we're one of the best liberal arts colleges, if not the best Christian liberal arts college in the country. And so all three of those are, even beyond the faith base of it, it's a quality education in a place that has the right size, and it really is community based. Because listen, let's be honest, you can go anywhere to learn to become an engineer, to become a math teacher, or to become ... right? But it's the connections that you make through college. And so Wheaton has a really good we're everywhere. All 50 states are represented on campus, and then anywhere from 20 to 40 different countries are represented year to year on Wheaton. So Wheaton is not just a regional or national, but we are an international influencing institution. That's what makes it one of the best colleges in the country.
And because of that, do you have recruits that are reaching out to you?
Yeah. And honestly, if you look at my, I've got a 25 to 30 man roster. On any given year, I have 14 to 17 different states, right? Right now on my team, at the beginning of last year, we had kids from Hawaii, California, Virginia, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and then Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois. At one point, I had more guys from the state of Washington on my team than I did from the state of Illinois.
You ever have any Jersey guys on your roster?
New York. I haven't got. I almost had a Jersey guy once. I was so close, so close. He would have been really good too because he was a stud. He was like a 3 or 4 time Jersey state champ, but he made some poor life decisions, and he was on kind of the rebound. And when he visited, he was like, "Coach, you're actually the first person that hasn't talked about my wrestling and has been more interested in me growing as a person." He appreciated that. Now he still didn't come to Wheaton, but he at least appreciated that aspect of who we were.
Was he a Greco guy by any chance?
No, he was not.
All right. All right. Thought it was someone else. Do you have a lot of guys that look at going to Wheaton because they are Greco guys and they want to be around you?
Yeah, there's that, but here's the problem is if I can't be both Wheaton College Wrestling coach and an RTC coach at the same time. It's not allowed by the NCAA. It's a stupid rule. Let me just say that right now. It is a stupid rule. I should be able to coach the college season, and then for any athletes who are interested, if they want me to teach them Greco, I should be able to teach them Greco because it's an Olympic style. But as the NCAA rules are right now, I can't do that. If I wanted to do that, I would either have to do NAIA, or I would just have to be a pure RTC coach and stop coaching at the collegiate level. And I'm not ready to do that yet. I don't feel God calling me to do that yet.
Are you able to incorporate it into the system though?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's some, I mean, yeah, we go over throws defense every year. In fact, one of my athletes was like, oh, why do we do this? Why do this? I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to hit a headlock. I'm like, you need it in your back pocket. I'm not saying you live and die by it, but you need it in your back pocket. And then sure enough, we go to the national tournament. He lost in the semifinals. He drops down to the Conci semis, and 30 seconds into the match, he wills the kid in a headlock, pins him in under a minute, walks off the match, and a little bit sheepishly, he's like, thanks, coach. I understand. I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah, it's a nice back pocket move.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know Jimmy and I we ran from Greco-Roman. Jimmy had a coach that was a Greco guy, so he got a little bit more of it. But I was trying to, back out of any situation where someone wanted to tie up with me in high school, and it was just, I think I would have benefited a lot from it, even if I took my lumps and was, someone talked to me about it, like, hey, it's okay to get beat here, but we're doing this to get better at this other stuff. And I think that still kind of is a case for a lot of kids that maybe shy away from it. But I think there's a place for it, a time and a place for it. Like you said, you never know when you might need something like a headlock, and not just something that the JV coach taught you because he's a football coach and he likes him, but like someone that actually does, how to do it the right way, how to set it up, and all those sorts of things. Can you talk about the benefits of Greco for middle school, high school kids?
Oh yeah. So number one, learning how to fight throws, even if you're not a thrower, learning how to protect yourself from throws. And so it comes back down to hand fighting. Do I know how to get in and get out of 2-on-1s, underhooks, and collar ties? Because if you don't, you're going to get into a match with someone who is really good at it. And they're going to listen. The whole idea behind winning a wrestling match is not avoiding the other person's strengths. It's making them wrestle your way, right? And if I'm a good upper body guy, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep the match upper body. And if you don't have an answer for that, so I tell kids this, it's simple. Don't overly complicate it. Dabble in all three. Dabble in freestyle, dabble in Greco, dabble in folk style. Pick the one that you want to be best at, but you've got to know all three. If you want to be a complete wrestler, you need to do all three, but you just specialize in one of them. And when you do that, because each one has its own unique shape, conditioning, and positioning. And so when you learn just the basics of each one of them, it's going to make you better overall. I mean, think about it. If you don't ever get turned in freestyle or Greco, because we have to break 90, right? But in folk style, it's 45 degrees. Well, if you learn never to break 90, are you ever going to get to 45? You'll never get to 45. You'll never expose your back. So I tell guys all the time, hey, listen, learn to never break 90 and you'll never get to 45. The fight should come before you even get to your back. You see kids fighting so hard to get off their back. Why weren't you fighting that hard before then? Then you wouldn't be on your back and you wouldn't be pissing away all your energy. So learn never to break 90 and you'll never get to 45. You'll never give up near fall points in folk style wrestling. So there you go. That's why. Learn to hand fight, learn to never break 90.
There you go, Jim.
Coach, yeah, 100%. Someone who spent a lot of time on the world team and Olympic ladder, and I believe you coached at Northern Michigan too, right? What do you think the thing is that holds the United States back in Greco? And we're not the same as we are in freestyle?
Okay, so it's a couple things. Number one, it's our stubbornness in this country not to adopt the Olympic styles of wrestling as our national style, right? It's not going to happen. We're just stubborn in America. We could use other adjectives there, but let's just say stubborn because I think it's the most graceful way to say it. We are the only country that elevates its folk style, its national style of wrestling above the Olympic style. So that in and of itself is ridiculous, and it's not going to change. Okay, well, then clearly the transition from folk style to freestyle is something that we can do, and we do it fairly well in this country. If you look at our freestyle success, we're great. Now, are there other nations that are just as good? Yeah, clearly Russia, Iran is very good. They're not as deep. You've got about 5, 6, 7 countries. Japan has been a hammer lately. They're kind of the new kids on the block. Now, Greco is a completely different creature altogether, right? And so there are more pieces of the puzzle that you need to become. And listen, we did it, right? They told us we would never be top 3 in the country. And yet in 2001, we took 3rd in the world. In 2006, we took 3rd in the world. And then in 2007, we won the world championships, and they said it couldn't be done. So clearly it can be done, but we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle in the play right now. So you have gaps in your puzzle, and the puzzle looks like crap. We've got to make sure that we put all those pieces back into the puzzle just the way we did in 2007. And so I think USA Wrestling is trending back towards that way. If you look at our age group thing, our U23, our U20s, they're starting to have a little bit more success. We're not there yet. We need a strong military program in the WCAPs. We need more than just one. I think more of the RTCs need to pick up Greco. Right now, they're really freestyle heavy. I think if we have a few more RTCs at the collegiate level, so guys who are good high school Greco wrestlers, they can actually train that in the off season. Those guys that are going to be 3 to 8 on the freestyle ladder that are never going to break into the top 1 or 2. And definitely not the top 1 because they're not beating guys like DIII, who I might add is probably one of our best hand fighters in this country, number 1, and could make the transition to Greco very smoothly because he already has such an upright stance and hand fights so well. So shout out to DIII. You should maybe think about Greco. Thomas Gilman's another one. Thomas Gilman knows how to hand fight in a way that a lot of us in this country don't. He gets underhooks and 2-on-1s the way most people don't. Thomas Gilman should also transition to Greco. I know Zane Richards just did it. I think Gilman and DIII should also both do it. I think they would be amazing Greco wrestlers. They would just have to learn a better gut and a lift. Although DIII has a pretty good gut, so DIII would have to learn a lift. So yeah, part of that is just getting all the pieces of the puzzle together. So like I said, better RTCs, more NMUs, a stronger military program, capturing those 3 to 8 guys and having it in such a way that they can participate in the world team trials process. So maybe having the nationals the same, but then having the Greco world team trials a month after the freestyle. So those guys that are 3 through 8 can transition and actually wrestle Greco. And if the current Greco guys are afraid of that, shame on them. They should want the competition. It's the only way we're going to get better is to have that iron sharpening iron.
Coach, I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk so passionately about Greco-Roman wrestling than I've been having this conversation with you.
Oh, I love it. I love Greco. I love everything about it.
Where do you mentioned, are there Greco RTCs?
So Illinois,
yeah, okay.
with Medlin, and Medlin's an amazing Greco coach, and of course, but as far as specifically, no, Tom Ryan's talked about doing something at Ohio State because he wants to attract more of those higher level Greco guys, and that would be good for him for recruiting. We've discussed that. He's had a couple of recruits that were high level Greco guys. He said, "Hey Jim, would you be willing to come out here and work with my guys if I did get them?" So I'm kind of in like Tom's back pocket of if he does get some Greco guys, I would make time, after the college season to start, training them. It hasn't materialized yet, but my guess is at some point it might.
Okay. Coach, going back to Wheaton, is with the faith base, is that something that is tied into the 4 years of the school, or
Yeah,
kids
absolutely.
go to chapel daily, weekly?
Yep. When I went to college at Maranatha, we had to go all 5 days a week. We had to go Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday morning church, and Sunday evening. Wheaton's not quite at that level. They make them go 3 days a week. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they give them like 11 skips every semester. So it's not quite as like if I skipped chapel when I went to college, I got demerits and eventually you'd get kicked out. Wheaton, you've got to like miss 12 chapels and like 3 semesters in a row before they start looking at you like, hey, what's going on? But yes, it's still a very faith-based. They encourage you to go to church, during the week, but they have the 3 chapels. And of course, it's encouraged to go on Sundays. There's nobody standing over you, cracking a whip. But listen, if you're struggling going to church, then there's a deeper problem
Sure.
right there. You should want to go to church, period. I mean, if it's part of it, it should be an outpouring of your relationship with the Father, is that you want to get mentored and develop. And that's what pastors are there for. They're to help you grow in your faith.
And you mentioned it's one of the top liberal art Christian colleges in the country. What are, at least from your team's perspective, what are your student athletes studying? Is there a predominant major amongst the wrestlers?
Yeah, so half my team is probably our business majors. And then the other half is a mix of communication, which is an amazing degree, very broad. You can go in just about anything. You can go into law enforcement, communication. You can be a wrestling coach with communication. If a kid doesn't know what he wants to do, I tell him become a communication major. You can go into marketing, sales, whatever, right? So, like I said, half are business, which is great because they make money and they donate back to the program. And then the other half is communication, teaching, ministry. It's a bunch of different degrees.
Geographically, where is Wheaton in Illinois?
So it's about 30 miles west of Chicago.
Okay.
Coach, is there anything about Wheaton and the program that we haven't touched on that you want our audience to know and listeners to know?
Well, yeah, I actually, and this is a little bit more of a practical things. You think, oh, it's Wheaton College, it's a small college. What's its wrestling room like? What are its facilities like? So when I got to Wheaton, we were stuck in a 40 by 40 room up above the swimming pool, and the heat worked sometimes, right? But as the program, when I got there, there was only 7 guys on the team, and 3 of them thought it was a club sport. So we did not have a big roster, and the college had actually tried cutting the wet wrestling program. The 10 years before I showed up, 3 different times they thought about cutting it. And they didn't have anything against wrestling, but the program was just kind of it wasn't bringing in enough money to support it. It was, I'm not going to say it was a cancer on the athletic department, but it was definitely holding it back and was definitely the unwanted stepchild of college sports there. But then I got there and God blessed. And so by my 3rd year, we've got 20 guys in the roster. And by my 4th or 5th year, we're pretty much averaging 25 to 30. And now I've got, guys pinballing off of each other in the room because we've got such a small space. And so, when I got there, I had a list of 7 things that I wanted to do, and one of them was a bigger, better room. And sure enough, when we started getting some in-room concussions, I went to the administration and said, "Hey, you need to do things differently. We need to train together as a team, but we're bouncing off of each other. We need a bigger space. What can we do?" And so we went through a couple of different scenarios, but eventually there was a Christian grammar school on campus that had left, and so it was a vacated building, and they had a big 80 by 65 gymnasium. And so I'm like, okay, this is great. Now it didn't have any heat, or the heat was kind of bad, but we ended up getting in that room. So by 2014, no, it was 2015, it was 2014, 2015 year. We were the only sport on campus now that has its own dedicated facility. We've got our own dedicated locker room that's right off the wrestling room. You walk out of our wrestling room through a door into our locker room. There are D1 programs that don't have that. And on top of that, our athletic training room. We're the only sport on campus that, number 1, has its own facility. Number 2, has a locker room right off that facility. And number 3, has an athletic training room right off of the wrestling room. So my guys can go from wrestling room, shower, right to the athletic training room for rehab. There are D1 programs that don't have that. And it's an 80 by 65 space. 80 by 57 of it is wrestling mat. And then the other about 8 feet is cardio equipment, strength conditioning equipment, cross-training stuff. That's great. Ways for me to get guys into that dark place and torture them.
You got some Bulgarian bags in there?
I do. I've got like 40 of the things, because
yeah.
I worked with Yvonne for 4 years and I was a guinea pig for a lot of the stuff they did. And he's a super genius when it comes to cross training stuff, right? I've got a gladiator wall up there. I've got the high intensity rope training system. I got battling ropes. I've got about to get, I've got UBEs, the upper body ergometers. Those are death. We've got assault bikes. We've got rowing machines. I'm about to get a Versa climber and one of those tire flip machines. If there's something that's cutting edge, I'm going to get it. We've got vibrating foam rollers. Our athletic training room has both a hot and a cold tub. We've got ice. We've got stim. We've got a Normatec. We've got Thermex. Again, I go to the Olympic Training Center, I find out what's there, and then I talk with a donor and I get it in my room because I know the difference between winning and losing is not miles, it's inches and sometimes millimeters and sometimes it's hair's breadth. So anything that I can get in there to get the guys recovering and their muscles to be better back. This year I'm buying a vibrating plate because I know it's good for bone and tendon strength and muscle recovery. So when we're doing some of the band training in the room, because that's what we do during the season. It's good maintenance training, is working with bands. It's very joint friendly rather than being in the weight room, which is off-season training in my mind, both preseason and postseason. We're going to be doing a lot of band training. Now we can do band training on a vibrating plate, which is great for your recovery and for HGH production. It's just a lot. There's a lot there. But anyway, so we have an amazing wrestling room at Wheaton College. It's one of the best in the country. Other than like your Penn States or your Iowas or your Ohio States, their rooms are clearly better than ours.
Have you guys kind of taken over that whole school? Do you have your offices and stuff in there as well?
No, so we just have
Gym.
the one gymnasium. They also brought the counseling center and the student health services over there, which is one of the ways. So I parlayed that because anytime that you do a building project, it's more cost effective to do everything together rather than doing it and then coming back and doing it. So when they did that, I was like, hey, we need a bigger wrestling room and we need, a locker room in there. So it's better for the rest of the campus. And we could probably use an athletic training room so it could relieve some of the overage in the other athletic training room. How about we just do all those building projects together? And like, Gruenwald, you're so annoying. I'm like, yes, I am. But am I right? Am I right? And like, yes, you're right. Go raise the money. And so we raised like $500,000 and we got her done. And so now our facilities are awesome.
Coach, you mentioned the community, the atmosphere in that wrestling room. Do you feel when you can get recruits on campus, you're going to get them?
So a lot of times I start with sending out about 400 emails, and then you talk with about 100 kids that respond to those emails, and you get about 20 of them on campus, and then hopefully I get 6 to 10 to commit. But yeah, normally if I mean, for me to travel and watch a kid compete somewhere, I can get that on Flow. Right, I can get them to send videotape or the NCSA. There's all these recruiting sites. I can see their stuff. But if I spend the money to get kids on campus because yes, I want them to experience the community. Because I could just be a really good used car salesman, right? Telling kids everything that they want to hear. But ultimately, if I can get them on campus, then they can see that everything that I've told them is true about the community that we have at Wheaton. And I think probably one of the best things that I can say about the Wheaton community, especially in the wrestling room, it's like a church, right? So if you go to church and the second the pastor's done speaking his message, everybody disappears. That's not a healthy church because there's no fellowship. Same thing with a wrestling team. If the second I'm done blowing that last whistle, if everybody disappears out of the room, that's not a healthy wrestling program. It's not a healthy sports team. And yet you'll find at Wheaton College 30, 60, 90 minutes after practice is over, guys are still hanging out in the room. There have been times I've been in the locker room talking with guys 2 hours after practice because they want to know about life, the universe, and everything. And so whether it be with me or hanging out with each other or playing hoops, because we've got a basketball hoop up in our room so the guys can, talk trash and play, 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 5-on-5. It happens. Or guys are just sitting against the wall talking about life. And so, yeah, we have an amazing community at Wheaton Wrestling.
Amen.
Coach, you had us in, and with all the strength and conditioning equipment, you got us hook, line, and sinker. I can feel your passion about strength and conditioning when we're talking, and there's no way I can have you on this podcast and not ask you, are the guys at Wheaton, are they doing grind matches?
Yes, although I've never run a 2-hour. Because we did that at the Olympic level. I've done 1 hour. I've done, I call it like mini grinds or baby grinds, like 30 minutes, or sometimes I'll break it up and have them go 10, 10, 10. So with 3 different people, 10, 10, 10. But we do things like bull in the ring as well, where you've got one guy in the center and you've got, 3, 4 guys circling in on him or I have another really fun practice that I call the 7 stations of righteousness. The guys have another name for it, but we won't mention that on a podcast because it's a little bit vulgar. But yeah, so my 7 stations of righteousness are, you've got 2 guys at a station. They go through 7 stations. One guy is resting while another guy is using like a Bulgarian training bag and doing the spins, right? And they've got to do spins for a minute, and then they got to wrestle for a minute, and then they got to do push-ups for a minute, and then they got to wrestle for a minute. So it takes 14 minutes to get through it. So it basically encompasses a match and a bunch of overtimes. And then I'll let them rest a little bit. We'll jog, and then the other guy has to go through it. So that's the 7 stations of righteousness, and it's glorious. It's one of those practices that I designed that is both awful and awesome, because when you finish it, you know that you've taken your wrestling and your strength, your conditioning, getting in that dark, deep, dark place that you can't really live in, but you have to be able to not just survive in, but learn to thrive in those dark waters. That's one of those practices, along with a grind match in a bull in the ring, that are fundamentally important, and that we do them just a couple of times throughout the season.
Rich, that's right up our alley, isn't
No
it?
doubt.
We got heavy into CrossFit, and I was coaching wrestling at the time, and we used to take the WODs, and I used to do groups of 3, and we used to do stuff like that. Seems like you have it down a little bit better, but I found great results with the kids, and I want to thank you for talking about the grind match back in the day on Flow Wrestling, because me and my college coach, we heard that, we saw that, and we did about 2 or 3 a season, and then when we coached together, we used to do it with the guys, and I always thought that was a good checkpoint of where I was mentally.
Yeah, honestly, if we're up to Frazier, we would have done them every day. That's it. Frazier was absurd with it. Even once a week was terrible. I mean, that's something that even at the Olympic level, it's something you should do like once every 3 months, right? It's not an every week thing, and yet we somehow found ourselves doing it more than that. But it got better.
So doing those at the Olympic Training Center, and the guy that you always used to have to go up against was Dennis Hall. Did you guys
Yep.
ever have to do a grind match together?
Dennis and I didn't train together.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was more of a him thing than a me thing. I didn't care. I already had listen, when I was at the Olympic Training Center, 4 of the top 5 of the guys in the country were in the room training together. Dennis was the only one that wasn't, and he would come in periodically for camps. But Dennis was a little bit more of a lone wolf, and listen, it worked for him, right? He's one of our most decorated World Olympic wrestlers, a 3-time medalist. He's an amazing human being, and I love battling with him. I in fact, it's one of the things I wrote in my book. I would not have been the wrestler that I am or was without Dennis Hall, because we had such epic battles that lasted for 15 years. You want to talk about glorious. Every time we stepped on the mat, it was like no quarter was asked and no one was given. It was just a knockdown, drag out fight. My 3 matches against him at the Olympic trials in 2000 are my 3 favorite matches, because we fought so hard. We both fought with every last drop of blood in our body, and it was epic. It was awesome. Yeah, that if I like it because they're all on YouTube. So I'll go back, and I've got them saved, and I'll go back every so once in a while and relive my glory days and watch them, just because I enjoy. I'm like, dang man, I used to be a good wrestler. I could bring it.
I'm sure you can still bring it.
Yeah, for sure.
I got a little piss and vinegar stuff still left in the tank. Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many matches you guys had against each other?
23.
Yeah.
I'm 7-16 against them.
So my dad always used to say to beat someone 3 times in a row is hard. How do you coach someone who's got to wrestle someone all season long, and you're like, hey, I was 17-16 against this guy?
Yeah. So when you look at that, number one, it's a matter of evaluating the match, and win or lose. This is important. Win or lose, here's what you do. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? We build on what I did right. We fix what I did wrong. So, and the other thing about that, because that's a growth mentality, right? Because if you win a match, you're like, oh, well, there's no urgency to get better because I won. My friend, stop. What did you do wrong in the match? What could you have done better? What could you fix? And so you evaluate the match. And even when you lose now, on the flip side of that, you lose the match, you're like, oh, I suck. No. You did some things right. I've had guys get donkey stomped in matches. I'm like, yeah, but you did this right. We can build off of this. Now we've got to fix all of this, but you did this right. And if you do this a little bit better. And so, yeah, I mean, there's ways to continue to beat people. And again, Dennis and I battled over 15 years, and I'm 7-16, but the last 6 matches, I'm 5-1. So it got better. Nobody wants a 7-16 record. That sucks, right? Maybe one guy on my team wants that because he won 1 college match last year, but everybody else, no. They don't want a losing record like that. But the last 6, I'm 5-1. That's a much different creature altogether. And that makes me happy.
It's good perspective, Coach.
Absolutely.
I got one last one for you, Coach, real quick. Your second book, Not All Roads Lead to Gold, the Parents Edition.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times parents put maybe undue pressure on their kids, maybe because they're living vicariously through them. Hopefully they have they think they have their best interest, but sometimes that comes across the wrong way. Is that kind of what that book encompasses? And is that something also that would be benefit for people that are coaching, at the high school or middle school level?
Yes, if you are if you are a kids club coach, if you're a middle school coach, if you're a high school coach, heck, if you're a college coach, it should be mandatory reading for every one of your parents, period. Period. Drop mic, walk out of the room. Because here's the deal. There are a lot of really good parents out there, but they lose their mind at sporting events, wrestling. And this isn't just this, and this isn't a wrestling book. This is for anybody in any athletic competition, period. In fact, in the first chapter, I think I even talked about if you're in arts, because there are parents that are, their kid's a violinist, and those parents are losing their minds because their kid isn't first chair, right? So yeah, and I get it, right? Parents are spending all this money, and so they think they have the right to be, Mr. Hyde, and they don't. They got to stick with Dr. Jekyll, right? You've got to, if this really is about your kid and their journey, because we talked about it at the very beginning. If you want to get to the elite level, just to get to the elite level, you've got to cut that penny into 1,000 pieces. And if you want to be a superstar at the elite level, it's 10,000. So essentially what I'm saying is it's a statistical improbability for you to be an elite level athlete, period. And yet we know, and I'm living proof of this, that there are elite level athletes. It's just statistically improbable that your kid's going to be that person, no matter how much money you throw at it. And so, yes, I get you're throwing a lot of money at this and you want your kid to do well, but statistically, he's not or she is not going to be a superstar in the sport. So then we just stop paying money or stop putting our kids in athletics? No, because the journey is important. Listen, the two greatest things that I learned about from the sport of wrestling are toughness, which is enduring pain, and compassion, which is helping other people endure pain, right? And so parents, you've got to understand what are the important parts of wrestling. So I go over the parent's responsibility. How do you deal with your kid? How do you deal with the other kid? How do you deal with coaches? How do you deal with officials? The value of winning and losing, what really determines winning and losing. So there's a lot of it. I mean, in my first book, the first book was winning and losing don't define you, they direct you. That's an important concept from the first book that I reiterate in the parent edition. Winning and losing don't define you, they direct you. Okay, number two, there's value in a journey that doesn't end in a gold medal. And number three, we learn to push through. We don't get comfortable with failure. We get comfortable with pushing through failure. So those are the three concepts from the first book that are reiterated to parents in the second book, but they're two completely different things. I target parents specifically, but you want to know what? Parents ain't buying the book. You know who are buying the book? It's coaches and kids. Kids are buying these books for their parents and using them as stocking stuffers because they're tired of their parents losing their minds and embarrassing them at competitions, right? And I get it. I've got kids in athletics, but you want to know what? I don't lose my mind because I know how hard it is to get there. And I know that if it's not me generated, like if it's not coming from inside of me to want to be this good, my outside influence on my kid is only going to drive them to hating the sport and hating me. And I've seen it. I've seen kids walk off the mat, flipping off their parents. I've seen kids hate sport and hating their parents because of it, and never being the athletes and never getting out of the sport what they could, which is just, listen, I came from a broken family and God used sport to bring my family back together. My dad came back into our lives because of wrestling, and he was one of the most amazing sports parents ever. And in all of my years of competition, my dad only lost his mind once, and it wasn't at me, it was at Dennis Hall, right? He stood up and called him number one. And I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. He's like, I know, he just makes me so mad. I'm like, try wrestling him sometime. But that's the only time my dad lost his mind, right? And so my dad is probably the ultimate sports parent because all he ever said, win or lose, son, I'm proud of you and I love you. And honestly, in my sports career, the one thing that I miss the most is walking off the mat and having my dad be there and saying, son, I love you and I'm proud of you. Win or lose, I got that hug. That's what I miss most about competition. It's not the winning. It isn't. It was the relationship. It was the fact that our family got pulled back together from brokenness and God used wrestling. And yet, how many families are destroyed because of sport? And it should be bringing us together. So parents need this book. They need to read it. It comes from a Christian worldview, yes, but even if they're an atheist parent, there's concepts and there's principles. There's at the end of every chapter, I give a key competition parenting skill and then some general principles on how to be a better sports parent. It's so important whether you're a little kid parent or a collegiate or Olympic level parent, you should read the book. Yeah, out of the three books, it's the least selling out of the three, and yet there's 100 million kids or parents in this country. Every single one should have that book. Every single parent should read it. It should be mandatory reading so they just parent better.
I'll be coaching cross country this fall at the high school that I work at, so I may require that for the parents.
Yeah,
Put
do
it
it.
on,
Do it.
put it on
You
the
won't
reading
regret it.
list.
It'll give you less headaches as a coach.
Yeah.
Every parent
Coach,
that has read it, they're like, "Oh, Jim, I blew it. I wish I would have had this 10 years ago." I'm like, "I'm sorry. I wasn't ready to write it until 2 years ago. So my apologies."
We wish you would have had it 40 years ago.
uh, absolutely. You raised a good point about families actually get broken up because of sports. And as you're saying that, I'm kind of going through my head at some of those families that we came up with. That you're like, oh, yeah, that family doesn't have a good sport because of wrestling, right? And a good relationship because of wrestling. Sorry, and Rich and I always talk about that and always kind of relate to that. One last thing I have for you before we get into the final four. You mentioned it's a Christian-based book, but it can even help atheists. How do you suggest Christians or people of faith or spirituality go through the world with that faith, but you're going to come across atheists? It's always going to have that conversation. I know as a young Christian, I was trying to save everyone, and I learned really quick those are some deep waters to be in. And if I can't recite scripture like you, I should probably shut my mouth.
Yeah, so part of it is too, is you look at Hebrews 13:7. Talked about looking at your leaders and how they live their lives, but they also spoke, right? So it's living it and speaking it. And it's speaking in a way that's not preachy, right? If you want preachy, you go to church. But even the best preachers aren't preaching at you, they're talking to you, right? They're relaying God's message to you. And so when I do camps and clinics, whether it be at a secular school or at a faith base, I just talk with people. I let them know about the failings of my own life without sharing any of the gross details and knowing that there is redemption out there and we can be better. And when I go to the Olympic Training Center and I hold faith and life development sessions, I say, listen, you're going to be in one of three categories. Category one is you're a Christian, you want to grow in your faith. I'm here for you. Category number two, you're searching. I'm here for you. Category number three, you're not interested in God, Christ, or anything like that. You just want to know about life, the universe, and everything. I was like, I'm married. I got a wife. I got 7 kids. I'm 55 years old. You know, I've got some scars on this body from a bunch of different things. I've learned some lessons, and I'm not going to love you any less or any more. It's like wrestling, right? I'm not going to love you more because you win. I'm not going to love you less because you lose. My athletes know that I love them equally. And it's the same thing. When I'm sharing the gospel, I'm commanded to love my neighbor, regardless of their faith or lack of faith, right? And so, with that being said, I'm there for them. And I also let them know, listen, when I talk, God and Christ come out of my mouth. Right? Some people, the F-bomb comes out of their mouth. You know, they use it as a noun, a verb, an adjective, a gerund, preposition, right? They're just really good at it. They're creative in their use of vulgarity, right? Well, in the same token, when I speak, Jesus and God and faith come out of my mouth. I'm not here to jam it down your throat. I'm just letting you know what worked for me. You're going to have to find that thing that's bigger than you, that's going to be guide rails in your life. For me, it was Christ. I needed God-sized guide rails in my life to keep from going off the rails. And so that's what worked for me. I know it'll work for you, but you got to get there yourself. I can't make you love wrestling. I can't make you love Jesus. I can't make you love God. I can't make you love any of those things. That's just something that you've got to come to on your own. I just know that it works. I'm telling you it can work for you. So that's normally how I relay it. I'm just genuine and real with people. I've made mistakes. I'm a flawed human being. God's given me some success in my life, and so that's how I am. I'm going to pass that on, and then it's their choice. My job is not to save the world. Christ did that, right? That was Christ's job. My job's to tell people about it, and if they listen, great. If they don't, that's between them and God. I don't have any responsibility for results. Mine is effort. Christ said, go and make disciples of all nations. That's effort based. Whether they choose that, that's between them and God.
I could do a better job with God coming out of my mouth and not some of those F-bombs. My inner Jersey gets the better of me sometimes.
Yeah, I know. People cut you off and you want to tell them that they're number one, and that's just not that's not winning souls to Christ, though.
Yeah.
No.
No doubt.
Final four, Rich?
Let's do it.
All right. Coach, first one I got for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
No, they'll stunt my growth.
Where do you get all that energy from, sir?
That's kind of funny. I was at a wrestling camp last year and like, dude, how many sports drinks do you have before these sessions? Because you are like on all the time. I'm like, listen, I don't need that beta male crap in my body, so I'll just give it a hard time. But no, this is just kind of like, this is me. This is how I wake up in the morning, and it's how I go to bed at night. It's just how I'm run. Yeah. Now I will tell you this. I love the smell of coffee in coffee shops. I will walk by a coffee shop and just sniff that in. I'll open up a coffee thing and smell it. I love the smell of it. I just never got into the taste of it. I had like one little sip when I was 5 years old, turned me off, and I've never gone back.
That'll do it. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Jim Gruenwald?
I start off every morning with a cold shower, and I hate it. I hate it, especially when you turn around and the cold hits your back. I don't like hot water on my back. I don't like cold water on my back. I'm up in northern Wisconsin right now helping my parents out. We're on a Holiday Inn, and the water is cold up here. Now, the coldest water I've ever had was up in northern Michigan. I took a shower there. Once cold water, I started off the day with it. It felt like I got kicked right in the crotch. I thought I had three Adam's apples. I had to push everything back down. It would hurt so badly. It hurt. So I start off every morning with a cold shower, and I read my Bible every day. Those are my two biggest, because again, you need structure, strain, and scripture in your life. So every day I have structure, so I don't go off the rails. I have strain in my life, so I try to get some strain. Sometimes it's just taking that cold shower in the morning. That's a strain for me. A lot of times it's lifting or wrestling, and then of course scripture. Scripture's got to be in my life daily because it's so important. That 2 Timothy 3:16 verse that talks about that scripture is God breathed. Well, there's an order of operations after that people miss in that God breathed part of it, because it equips us to be better Christians. And that order of operations are four things. It teaches us, what's wrong, right? Because we've got to know what's wrong, and then it convicts us of it, because we don't know what's wrong until we know what's wrong. We can't be convicted of it, and then after we're convicted of it, we've got to change, and after that change, we've got to know what right living is, right? So you've got to do those four things. So read that 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, and see that there's an order of operations there. And each one builds off of the other. It's just like in math. If you don't follow the order of operations, you're going to get it wrong. If you don't get the order of operations right in 2 Timothy 3:16, you're really not going to get scripture as well as you could. So those are the things that I do to kind of to make me a better me every day.
You probably just get some cold showers in Illinois in the wintertime, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It hurts.
Yeah, we can relate with the cold showers. Unfortunately, I'm in Florida right now, and the water does not get too cold, so I'm kind of jonesing for that. But like Rich
Ice
said,
bath, baby. Ice bath it.
I ice bath. I have these big silicone, I think they're 10-pound ice trays. So I'll load up the freezer, and once, twice a week, I'll get on that.
Love it. Love it. Torture.
Yep, absolutely. Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
So I'm currently reading, probably for about 20th time, Rob, why am I blanking on the author now? I'm I'm going through the original author of Conan. I can't believe I guess I get dropped in my head too many. What is Howard? Is it Howard? I'll look it up. But yeah, I'm reading Conan again. I'm a sci-fi fantasy nerd. As far as music, a lot of people say they've got a pretty broad playlist. If I read my playlist of like my 200 favorite songs, you're going to get everything from classical music to James Taylor to Air Supply, Journey, and Murray, the Carpenters. You're going to get Adele, Usher, I've got Boondock Saints. I got just so many. Yeah, Pavarotti. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in it. So yeah, I don't listen to any, Elton John, George Michael. Oh yeah, good singers. Yeah, I've got a lot of different songs. Yeah, I'm in. Um, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what I listen to. And as far as podcasts, um, I don't, my pastor does something called the God-centered life, and he really gets scripture. So I listen to him quite a bit. Especially when I'm on the road trip traveling to camps and clinics, I'll listen to him. And then I also like listening to that Huberman. I think he's got some good experts on. I've gotten some good things out of him as well. So those are kind of what I'm listening to as far as the podcast.
Okay.
Robert E. Howard.
Robert E. Howard. That's right. Robert Howard. I kept on thinking Ron Howard. I'm like, that's not right. That's Ron Howard's Opie. It's Robert E. Howard. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. He actually committed suicide. He was a little bit moody. A lot of people thought he was writing the Conan based a little bit because he always described Conan as being moody, but just a primal force of nature. Conan was just he was just so awesome. It's a good book. The original, I think it was like 12 books. I've got it in like a little like in one solid, and I read them all every so once in a while because I just like that primalness of Conan. Could be in a battlefield and he could reach out and grab someone's forearm and snap it because he was just so powerful. That's amazing to me. He could run just as fast backwards as he could forward. He was just the real Conan is epic. I loved it. Arnold didn't do him justice. Arnold's a great bodybuilder, beautiful body, right? Love it. Love Arnold. Classic physique, one of the best bodybuilders of all time ever. But he was not Conan the Barbarian. He did not have that smoldering look in his eyes, those blue eyes with that black hair and that hairiness and that just primal force of nature. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Coach, as a sci-fi guy, do you get down with the Star Wars franchise
Oh,
at
I'm
all?
such a nerd. I'll push a little kid out of the way to get a better seat in a movie theater. Yeah.
You like
Yeah.
You like the Disney stuff, the series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watch it. And listen, I'm a child. Like no discrimination whatsoever. I just watch and people are like, oh, that's so awful. I'm like, listen, if I wanted reality, the Obi-Wan series, they could have probably done a better job with the child actor, that girl. She wasn't great. But the series, those last two scenes with him and Vader, unbelievable. Like my son's super critical of it. Well, why do they do this? And I'm like, shut up, son. Don't ruin it for me. All right. I just want to sit there and envision having lightsabers. And when I walk through doors that open, mechanical doors that just open. Yes, I do that. Yes, I do. I'm a nerd.
Okay.
And it's okay to be a nerd as long as you're a physically fit nerd. You heard
Absolutely. Amen.
We are nerds.
Coach, you mentioned your son. You said you had 7 children. Are any of them wrestlers?
They dabbled in it.
Dabbled.
My son dabbled in it for a little bit. My number 3 child. So I've got 1 boy and 6 girls, and then I brought my nephew in 5 years ago. So I technically have 8 kids at my house. But my son dabbled in it. Child number 3 dabbled in it, and child number 5 really wants to do it. So she did it last year as a sophomore and broke her elbow, but she wants to do it more. So we're gonna start training her.
Okay. Do you just refer to them as numbers?
Well, they all have
Call
2
them
syllable.
child 1,
Yeah,
child 5.
Yeah, it's easier because they all have 2 syllable A names, and especially the 6 girls, they all look like their mother, but they act like me. So, which is awesome. Not great for my wife, but great for me. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, 2, 3, get here now. Yes.
Yeah, because our mom flip-flops our names all the time.
Yeah.
So I
It's
can
hard.
imagine with 7, it must be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Coach, last one we got for you is the lighthearted one to close it out. You're in Illinois. Maybe you're a deep dish guy. Maybe there's some other sort of food or drink out there in your neck of the woods. You do have multiple girls, so maybe you're a closet Swiftie. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Well, I have a guilty pleasure. You know what? I don't go out of my way to get this, but I do like that pink acai lemonade that Starbucks has. Every so once in a while, one of my daughter, my number 4 child, is one or 2 that I think are most like me, and probably the most volatile of my kids. So she's got a lot of me in it. I had to learn to control that. But that, and then Starbucks just came out with this matcha, this lavender oat milk matcha thing. I love matcha. And so I love matcha so much that I actually got matcha from Costco, and I'll mix that with some 100% maple syrup and some oat milk and like 6 ice cubes, like 8 ounces of oat milk, like 2 ounces of 100% maple syrup. It's got to be 100% maple syrup. No Aunt Jemima, not that garbage, right? That doesn't make me a racist. That just means it's bad syrup. Okay. And then a scoop of the matcha. And then I put a scoop of collagen protein in it. And then like 6 ice cubes. And I mix that all up. And I'll make that for myself every day. So that's probably my guiltiest of guilty pleasures.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your go-to in the morning before
Well,
without
I'll
the
have that
coffee?
for lunch, not in the
Lunch?
morning.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lunch thing. I don't want any caffeine before noon.
Okay. All right. What kind of collagen you using? Anything specific?
Oh, what
Any
is it? It's like
brand?
the Orgain, I think. It's the Orgain stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
It's decent and it's at Costco.
Yeah.
So why not?
Okay. Yeah.
I
Heck
can
yeah.
buy it in bulk. I've got a massive family, so whatever we can buy in bulk, we do.
Yeah. I would imagine that gets a little pricey with 7 or
Yeah.
8.
8, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a plague of locusts.
Coach, your energy is contagious, sir. You got me fired up right now. I am super stoked that we got to have this conversation with you. Thank you for staying overtime with the Airey Bros tonight. This was an epic conversation, and I know our fans are going to love it.
Rich, Jimmy, thanks for having me. And let me know when it comes out because then I'll share it on my Facebook page and on my Instagram because I'm at like James Gruenwald on Facebook. And I think my Instagram, my daughter set it up for me. So because I'm starting to put up some things spiritual, but also wrestling related. And I think that's James Gruenwald as well. James.Gruenwald at Instagram or wherever it is. But yeah, those are the 2 social media sites that I post most of my stuff. So when this comes out, I'll post it.
All right.
Awesome. We do appreciate you doing that for us, Coach, and we'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well. But as Jimmy said, it's been an honor and a pleasure to chat with you tonight, get to know you, and have a great conversation with you. We are honored, and we look forward to following great things next season with the Wheaton College Wrestling program as well.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. That's Jim Gruenwald, ladies and gentlemen, from Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. He gave out the team socials, but make sure you go to all roads don't lead, not all roads lead to gold.com. Sorry. Go get that book. All right. If you're a parent and your kids are playing sports, not just wrestling, but any sport, go check out the book. I think it's going to be beneficial for you and more importantly for your son or daughter who's competing in sports. Try not to put too much pressure on them. Just let's get out there and have fun and know that it's about the journey, not the destination. And we will be back tomorrow with Tom Huck from Claw, the new professional wrestling league that is starting up. We're excited for that conversation tomorrow. So we'll be back here at the same time tomorrow. We look forward